How are you doing? I'm Alex Mahadevan. I'm the director of MediaWise at Pointer. And thank you all for coming back. I thought after last night, I didn't know how many would make it. It looks like we're getting a few coming in. So thank you. I want to thank the great IFCN team, our host, Destiny, and our sponsors for a really, really fantastic first day of Global Fact yesterday. I think it was really reflected in the party last night that we're all having a really good time. So, if you're up for it, I want to start with a little exercise. Are we okay with that? Okay, it's not actual literal exercise. I want everyone in here to close your eyes. Okay, I know it's cheesy, but everyone close your eyes. We're going to use our imaginations. All right, everyone in seats, I want you to reach under your seats and grab the VR headset that is taped under your seat right now. There actually isn't a headset under there, but we're using our imagination.
It won't make noise.
Now, I want you to put it on. I see some people putting it on. I want everyone to put it on. You get your drink tickets if you put it on. And I want you to imagine your favorite fact check that you've written, like the best fact check that you've written. Now, I want you to imagine Mr. Beast. Well, an AI avatar of Mr. Beast in your headset reading you that fact check. What do we think about that? Weird? Good? Imagine how many people, how many kids you would be reaching if Mr. Beast was out there in every single VR headset reading your fact checks to them. Well, you may not be very enthusiastic about that. But after Maria's speech yesterday, she said something that really stuck with me. She said that the digital news industry would collapse within the next year. So that really stuck with me, and I started thinking a lot about how the use of AI can really affect the future of fact-checking, which is really intertwined with the digital news industry, and how we can leverage AI to avoid, at least within the next year, the collapse of our entire industry. So you might know me from my media literacy work and the world of community notes, but I've been obsessed with AI ever since ChatGPT came out, and I was able to create a fake news website with no coding in like 30 minutes. Now I use it to clone my voice and try to scam my parents out of money, which hasn't worked that great. So really, make no mistake, AI is an existential threat to the information ecosystem. I don't mean to make light of it at all. And as Jency said yesterday, we are fighting tanks with sticks and stones. So today, I hope we can level up and start thinking bigger about AI. We will be going into the really thorny issues, so I'm sure you're all concerned about training data and how your data is being used in the development of AI models. We're going to hear more and more about deepfakes, which are kind of threatening elections, but this really hasn't been the year of the deepfake as we thought, but that is a threat that we're looking at going forward. But fortunately, we're going to begin on a light note. We're going to talk about how we can leverage AI in our fact-checking, in your news reporting, in the business model of your organizations to get to the world of Mr. Beast. Whether you like it or not, we are kind of heading in that direction. So now is the time when we need to be experimenting. So I'm really excited to introduce someone who has spent a lot of time laying the groundwork for that world. Nikita Roy is a data scientist, journalist, and Harvard-recognized AI futurist. She is currently a Knight Fellow at the International Center for Journalists, focusing on AI literacy in the news industry. She leads the AI Journalism Lab and serves on the AI Advisory Board at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY. Additionally, she heads the development of the AI Discovery course at Journalism AI at Polis, the journalism think tank at the London School of Economics. Nikita is also host of the globally acclaimed Newsroom Robots podcast, which you must check out on your flights home. It's incubated at the Harvard Innovation Labs and is regularly ranked among the top in technology podcasts. I met Nikita back in March at South by Southwest, and within 3 months, she was helping to lead Pointer's first AI summit on ethics and journalism. And she's spoken at pretty much every single journalism conference that I have seen over the last couple of years. So we're really lucky to have her. I was thinking a lot about how maybe we're in sort of the purgatory of AI. We haven't quite slipped into hell yet. But what I'm hoping is Nikita can come out and talk, and then we can ask some questions after, so we can kind of get out of that purgatory and maybe move our way toward heaven. I know we're not used to thinking positively as fact checkers, but maybe we could try. So welcome to the stage, Nikita Roy.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Alex, for that kind introduction, and thank you to Pointer and IFCN for bringing me out here. It's really so great to be the presence of all of you today, and thank you all for joining me this morning to talk about a topic that is impacting our information ecosystem, generative AI, and I think that we are kind of at a pivotal moment in time right now where we will look back at this moment in time that we are decades from now and hopefully say that we got it right with tech this time. Generative AI, as we're seeing, is having a profound impact on the information landscape. It's impacting the dis and misinformation campaigns. All of you over here are at the forefront, the guardians of truth who have been seeing the impact that it's having. But what I really want to get into today and for us to understand more is how we can leverage AI for our own work. And I want you to take, with the amount of time that I have with you today, take you on a journey to understand more about the strengths and limitations of generative AI, for us to understand how it's impacting our information landscape at the moment, and what can we do in this present moment of time to be able to be on top of this technology, and why we as the news industry need to be on top of this technology. And that's mainly for two reasons. First of all, I think we really owe it to our audience to be one of the most informed citizens on AI, because this is having a profound impact on every single industry as well as the information ecosystem. And second, if we use it responsibly and ethically, it has the potential to streamline workflows and enhance productivity, which is so important for this community of fact checkers here, because every single minute misinformation is spread online and we delay in getting our fact checks out, that's another second that the information landscape is being polluted. And that's so important for us to get across our fact checks quickly. And so with all of this, this is mainly what I want us to talk about today. AI is not new to the fact-checking community. Y'all have been dealing with it for a while. But what's new is this advent of generative AI. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. Whenever I say AI, I'm mainly referring to generative AI. We are in the midst of a big year in elections. More than half the world's population is currently having an election. We have over 60 countries facing elections. A lot of them have already had those, and we've seen how AI is impacting elections. And we have seen that in Slovakia earlier, ahead of their 2024 elections, we saw that political operatives were using AI voice clones to basically say that candidates were misappropriating and creating inflammatory statements with AI, but it was all spread online and they were fakes. We've seen that again. Moldova has had a lot of deep fakes that have been attacking the president specifically. And all of that is part of undermining Moldova's democratic institution, part of a larger disinformation campaign against the pro-European leadership, mainly linked to Russian actors trying to undermine that democratic institution ahead of their 2024 elections. And then over in Venezuela, you have seen that the state media have been propagating pro-government propaganda using fake AI English language anchors claiming to be an international news channel. And so with all of this, we're already seeing how AI is impacting. And all of you here have been at the forefront of that. And that's what this year of elections has also been looking like. And this is AI is just adding another layer to the mis and disinformation that all of you have already been a part of and have been dealing with. What AI is now doing is it is supercharging lies. The barrier to entry for disinformation agents is minimal. People are able to do that and create realistic videos, voice clones, mass-produced text at scale. What's different about this technology from the rest is that we have shifted from using technology to now not just spread misinformation at scale, but now generate falsehood at scale, at an unprecedented scale specifically, and at great sophistication. And it's becoming difficult to tell what is fact from fiction. I have a quick exercise for all of you just to highlight how sophisticated these tools are. I'm in a room of fact checkers right now, so we're going to do a quick fact check for all of you. I'm going to show you a split screen video in a second. One of them is me, and one is my AI avatar with the exact same script. And after that, I'm going to poll the room, and we're going to see which one, if you're able to identify the AI avatar out of me. And it's a quick 10-second video, so keep your eyes glued to the screen there.
Disinformation is more sophisticated and harmful than ever before. I am one of the thousands of journalists working to fight it with ICFJ's help.
OK, so who here thinks the video on the left side of the screen was the real version of me? OK. Seems like a lot. OK, how about the right side of the room? It's quite 50-50. It's 50-50. And often, I actually do this with a poll on the screen, which is anonymous. So usually, everyone's voting, and I can get the exact numbers. And it's always 50-50. And the highest I've had is 75% of the room has gotten it wrong. But if you said this version of me was the real version, then you were correct. And if not, clap, give yourself a clap, because otherwise that was the AI version of me. And you can just see just how similar it is, and it is so difficult to distinguish between what is fake and what is real. And this was shot at a broadcast studio, and this tool was able to create my fake AI version with just 10 minutes of video and given a script, and I can talk in any language that I want now. I can start to speak in Arabic and French and Spanish and languages that I don't know at all just with the click of a button. And that's what this technology is now enabling us. We are a room of fact checkers. Your day in, day out, your job is deciphering truth from falsehood. And we still did not get a whole 100% getting this right. We were still 50-50 in this room. So you can just imagine, what is it like for the general public right now to be in this information landscape where it is polluted with mis and disinformation, and where it's difficult to tell what is real. And that's all being powered by this technology, generative AI. But what is it exactly before we get further into it? I want us to have a baseline understanding of what generative AI is. At its core, it's a subset of artificial intelligence that generates outputs such as text, images, video, music, all by learning patterns from its input data. And that's really important to understand, because what it is at its core is all it's doing is predicting. It's predicting what's the most likely next word, what's the next pixel in that image, what's the next note in a piece of music. All it's doing is being a prediction engine. And what that means is that it's not grounded in truth. It is not grounded in truth, and as a result, it means it's probabilistic, because all it's doing is predicting. And that has an impact onto the information ecosystem, because these models can now produce false information, or what they call hallucinations. This technology we are living in right now has been unleashed into the public, a chatbot that can produce misinformation and do that unintentionally, calling it hallucinations, but it is polluting our information landscape. And so you don't just have threat from disinformation actors, but you have a chatbot that is going around producing information and misinformation over there. And this technology is important to understand because it's not just impacting how people are using, it is changing the entire user experience of the information ecosystem. Gen AI, at the end of the day, is a UX revolution. And what I mean by that is it's embedded within every single technology, platform. It is becoming a part of our everyday life. Right now, you can see that generative AI is embedded in your everyday tools like Microsoft Copilot on Word. You have Google Gemini drafting emails for you on Gmail. This is available to the public. You then have generative AI embedded within Meta's AI ecosystem. It's being embedded across all of their apps, such as Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. That's a screenshot over there from my WhatsApp. I can either go to the search bar and search for something, or directly go and ask Meta's AI model. And over there, I can just go and ask, what's the news in Toronto? And it's going and searching the web and producing information, or producing hallucinations, which is misinformation. And on top of that, we also have on X now, in their Grok AI chatbot, generative AI is being used to produce X stories, which is basically a summary of posts on X that people have posted, and that is being presented across as information. And then finally, on Snapchat as well, you have generative AI as a chatbot called My AI. Over 150 million people have interacted with this chatbot. Over 1 billion messages have been sent. This technology is something that the public is actively using, whether they realize it or not. And it's a part of our information ecosystem, and it's something that accidentally hallucinates and produces misinformation. On top of all of that, we have generative AI search. This is changing the way search engines look like. Generative AI search is basically going and scraping websites when you ask a particular question, and then based on that, summarizing it and giving you information. Here, what I did was I asked a recent fact check that was done on PolitiFact. I went and I asked Perplexity, which I think is one of the tools that is actually leading the way on how generative AI search will look like. So far, we have had Google AI Overviews that's being rolled out in the US currently and is being tested. But Perplexity is the tool that you want to go to if you want to see how generative AI search is looking like and what it would look like. Because I went and asked this exact fact check statement, does Joe Biden want to quadruple taxes? And it gave me the exact fact check answer by basically going to PolitiFact and scraping that. And the other one was, there was a Times article, there was an article from the CNBC. It went, scraped all of that, and then was able to produce this fact check. What does that mean when people go to generative AI search tools to get their information? Which again, because generative AI has the ability to produce misinformation, what does that mean for our entire information ecosystem? This is all things that we need to be keeping in mind when we're thinking about what the future of truth is going to look like, because we do not have any control over all of this. Tech companies do. They are controlling the landscape of AI. We do not have any power over this. But what we do have power over is how we as an industry use AI and think about this technology for our advantage. And the way to go forward and combat the risks of AI is by learning to use AI effectively, ethically, and leading as an industry to show how this technology could be implemented for responsible use, where we are embedding in the principles of accuracy, truth, and transparency. And that's what I hope we can understand and get through to today, because we need to understand when to use this technology, and that starts with understanding what it's good at. If you can take away anything from today, I hope it is this slide, that language generation does not equal knowledge generation. And what I mean by that is generative AI at its core, like large language models, are language generators. They are not knowledge generators. That's what all of you here in the room are in the business of, knowledge. You fact check and verify information and add to the knowledge in the information ecosystem. What large language models do is only generating language. And there is a difference between a language task and a knowledge task. And we need to know when to use generative AI effectively, because you need to have this distinction, because if you're using generative AI for like a language task, like drafting an article or helping you with some sort of like headlines, those are all language tasks. But now if you go and ask the same question that you would go and ask Google to a chatbot, that's a knowledge task. Even though the user experience of both Google and a chatbot like ChatGPT both look the same, it's a search bar where you go and ask a question and it spits out information, they are completely different tools. ChatGPT, at its core, is just a probabilistic prediction of words that have all been strung together. That's what it is. But Google is now giving you the sources that you can now go and fact check and verify information on. And that's what's so important. You do not have citations in large language models like ChatGPT, and they need to be used for what they're good at, which is language generation. They are not good at knowledge generation. They can only be used when you give it a specific amount of knowledge that we should be in control of, and then use language on top of that. And so I want us to talk about today, to understand how can we make AI work for us, what the top AI conversational tools are, and what the landscape is looking like. So first of all, we have ChatGPT from OpenAI, one of the most popular generative AI tools out there. And then the same thing is being powered through Microsoft Copilot. If you have gone onto Microsoft Copilot and you have ever played around with it, that's actually connected to the Bing search engine. So now over there, the knowledge source is the web. And that's where it's able to produce some information from by scraping sites. But again, we need to be careful about what sites it's scraping. A lot of news websites at this moment have blocked access to GPT being crawled, or Gemini, Google as well, from the Google chatbot crawling their website. As a result, what's happening again is generative AI search in Gemini, Google, Microsoft Copilot, they are not going and scraping authoritative news information. They are going and scraping any other websites that is not authoritative. Most news websites are blocking them and blocking these GPT bot crawlers. And again, that's leading to a polluted information ecosystem. And then finally, we have Claude from Anthropic. That's actually a really good tool that I tend to use more for a lot of like writings and editing, because they have its language capabilities are really, really good. And so this is kind of the landscape overall. I tend to use these tools and bounce around from all of them. And I think as fact checkers, we need to be able to understand what the capabilities are of each tool, and we need to be experimenting with them heavily. Because we need to know how we can make AI work for us. How do we do that is only by constantly iterating and playing around with this. And the next bit, I want to show you kind of the big problems that arise in content production, and how can we make AI work for us in all of this. One of the big problems is web content creation is time intensive. You've done your fact check, you've done the article, you've done the core work, but now you need to go produce that get that onto the web. You need to draft headlines, and then you need to make sure that this article is searchable and shows up on search engines. So you need to have your SEO metadata, and you need to be able to translate this and do so many of these tasks, which are all language tasks, and that's where generative AI can help you. Here you can take an article and then be able to ask ChatGPT for headlines or SEO metadata. Or there's also a free Slack tool called YesEO that's currently used in over 400 local newsrooms, and it can be used in over 10 different languages. All you have to do is input your article, and this tool will spit out headline ideas for you, and then also give you SEO description. This is now a language task that is built on top of knowledge that you have produced to help speeden up that workflow of getting information out on the web quickly. Another example is translation. You need to have it in multiple different languages to get across to people and reach a global audience. ChatGPT can translate and respond in more than 95 languages. And so this is something that where you can, again, speed up that language task of getting information out quickly. And then finally, writing alt text. Alt text is for those who probably need it for accessibility, for our visually impaired audience who rely on alt text. Often what we see is short, brief alt text that are being produced that might not really be descriptive. And here what you can see is I put in an image, my social media image from my podcast episode, and I told it to write a brief alt text for this image to post on LinkedIn. And as you can see, it's produced a much more descriptive text than what I would be doing, which is now helpful for the people who rely on alt text. We need to remember that the people who rely on alt text are also our audience, and we need to get across that information to them in a way and cater to them. And this is just one way in which ChatGPT and tools like generative AI tools are helping with helping solve that problem of getting your content out on the web, which can be time intensive. Another big problem that we tend to have is information retrieval. It's slow. There's so much of documents, there's so much of information out there, there's so much of knowledge out there. How do we know where to go and get that information and where it is hidden? That's another way in which if now you give the knowledge source and use the language capabilities of a large language model, you can now use it for information retrieval. So one example is you can summarize information from PDFs. Upload a PDF onto ChatGPT, Claude, any of these generative AI tools, and you can chat with it. Are you looking for specific information? You can check to see if that information exists in the PDF. And this is just a quick way for you to find out where this information might exist, what tool it might be at, and then for you to go and fact check from there. Again, you have now given the knowledge source. You are in control of the knowledge. That's core to understand when dealing with generative AI models. You need to be in control of what knowledge you're giving it, and only use it on top for its language capabilities. If you want to chat with your files locally, you have a lot of sensitive or private data, there's a tool called Anything LLM, where you can completely disconnect from the internet and run it completely locally on your computer. And what I also like about this particular tool is that it also gives you citations. It will tell you among this entire knowledge base of PDF articles that you've uploaded, which particular PDF article has been used to generate this answer. And then on top of that, also what chunks from that PDF correspond to that particular question that has been used to generate that answer. Again, helping you with fact checking if generative AI model over here has made any mistakes or if it is correct for you to do a double check all of the work. At the end of the day, when we are working with all of these generative AI models, it is still our critical thinking, our fact checking, and our human judgment that is at the core that we still need to employ, and we cannot rely on the models completely. You can also use it now to chat with YouTube videos. If you go onto Google Gemini, you can just go and ask any video that's out there, ask it what was discussed, get information, retrieve information from it. So here's an example. This was an NVIDIA address that was done, and I just went and asked YouTube what was discussed in the video and was able to bring that bullet point, every single thing that was discussed in that video, and I can have a conversation with it back and forth. Now you want to go even more, and not just videos that are on YouTube. You have your own videos. You can go and extract that information from videos. So with Google AI Studio, you can now use models like Gemini 1.5 Pro and Gemini 1.5 Flash that I have used over here. In this example, just uploaded, this was a press briefing from 2022 about COVID-19 from the US government, and I uploaded that and I told it to extract all of the claims that have been made in this video. It just took about a minute for the model to process this entire 46-minute video, and then one by one, it told me all of the different claims that have been made in this video. I then took that one step further, and I wanted to find a particular timestamp where one of the claims was made. And so I asked it, at what timestamp was the claim that BA4 and BA5 predicted to be more transmissible than previous variants? When was that claim made? And it was able to tell me exactly. Took another minute or so, and it told me the exact timestamp at 9:59. In addition to that, it also knew that it was Dr. Walensky who made that statement, because over here, each one of them had a name, a caption with who was speaking when they were speaking. And so at 9:59, it was Dr. Walensky who was speaking, who made that exact claim, and it was able to understand. All of this happened within just a few minutes of me uploading a video onto Gemini, onto Google AI Studio, and Gemini was able to now understand videos, and you were able to interact with it. You can do the same for images. You can extract data from images. Over here, what I have is an image that I used on Microsoft Copilot. I told it to extract the data from this image and now convert it into a table. Over here, what you can see is it's basically given a graph, and none of the companies are listed below. It's just the logos. And here's how Microsoft Copilot ended up producing the entire table for me. It knew exactly which company it was able to identify it because of its logo, and then it was able to pull out all of the data from there. You are now able to, with a click of a button, extract data, text from images. And then finally, one of the main things that we need to be thinking about also is repurposing content. We have all of this information that is out there on the web, but we need to repurpose that and get that onto so many different social media platforms. We need to get it to where our users are. According to the latest Reuters Digital News report, especially the young population, over 2/3 of them are interested in short-form videos. That's where they get their news from. And so we need to be where our audience are. They are not going and just surfing the web. It's in video. It's, again, seeming like another pivot to video moment that's happening. But what's different right now is that we have generative AI on our side. You can now use generative AI to repurpose your articles into videos. And here's how. There are a few tools on the market at the moment. There's a tool called Hey Noda that a lot of local news publishers I know of in the States are working with. But there are also tools like Hypernatural AI, Capwing AI, capwing.com. All you have to do is input an article of your, input the URL of your article, and within a few minutes, it creates a video by going and scraping all of the information from your site, the images from your site, and then you also have the option to tell it to go and pull out images from its stock library, and then it's able to create those text overlays on top of images and produce a video. And you can now, all you have to do is edit them. Decide how you want to, what you want to do, edit the text, edit the images, but it has completely streamlined that workflow. And once you have this particular video done, you can resize it for all the different platforms. Whichever platform you want to make and create, that's how it's able to do it. And so this is, again, one example of how we can get our content out there to more people, and that's where AI is really, really helpful and useful. Another way is for us to repurpose our long videos to shorts. You have webinars out there, YouTube videos out there. There are tools like Opus and Descript where all you have to do is upload a video or input a YouTube link, and the AI model is able to then look at the entire video and decide which are the most viral clips that could be based on its training data. And over here, what you saw on Opus, I uploaded a video that Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, did a talk at Stanford recently. And it was able to generate about 25 viral clips for me and rank them from 1 to 25, the most viral clip. And as you can see over here, it's also telling me why this clip could be viral, what could be improved later on to make this clip more viral, to enhance enhance the engagement of such video clips. So by doing all of this, we're also able to understand our videos, able to understand what short-form videos would resonate with people. And this is one way in which, again, we are getting our information out there. The challenge is people are not getting our information, and there is a broken ecosystem because tech platforms have come and are part of that and are controlling the relationship with audience. But we need to also be on those platforms and be able to propagate our information at just the same speed and level with which disinformation actors are doing that. They are using these kinds of tools to spread their disinformation. And the only way for us to combat that AI is by combating it while leveraging AI to get our fact checks across to people where they are. And with all of this, though, I have to say that I've just shown you 3 major problems that are in the content production and how we can use AI to help us and be more effective and efficient in our workflows. But we have to understand that AI is not always the solution. And if it's not a language generation, if you're looking at more of knowledge generation and where accuracy is really, really important, you cannot rely on AI. Without human oversight and expertise, AI is not effective because it can risk us being contributors to that same misinformation. Every single workflow that I showed you at this moment in time, generative AI requires human oversight. It requires you to be having your own expertise to leverage that technology and take it to the next level. So if there's anything you get from today, I hope it is that understanding exactly what the value of generative AI is, what the strengths are of this technology, and how it can help you work along with it. I hope that when we think back at this moment in time, 10 years from now, hopefully we say that we got it right with tech this time. And that's possible if we as an industry start leveraging AI, embracing AI, to use it not to replace our human judgment and critical thinking, but instead to augment our capabilities, to empower us to reach more people. And by doing so, we would be able to help counter the disinformation that is happening at scale by us producing fact checks and true verified information at scale, reaching our audience where they are. I think this is a moment in time that let's, as an industry, think about and understand ways in which we can use AI responsibly, lead this AI revolution, and show how we can lead it responsibly, ethically, think about the factors of truth and accuracy, and uphold that when we talk about AI. And with that, I'm happy to get into a lot more about all of this and questions with all of you and address it and see how AI can help you better.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Nikita. That was fantastic. I'll ask a few questions. What I'll say is the reviews are in. They're coming in. Very informative session. Thank you, Rashnil. I think I see you back there. Yes, and this session will be available on demand after if you want to watch a recording or share with your friends, family, coworkers, anyone you know. So thank you, Nikita. I'm going to ask you a few questions here, and then we'll open it up to the crowd for a few minutes. So please be thinking about the questions that you would like to ask Nikita. So we are fact checkers. So I'm going to have to start with a negative question, perhaps. But I think as fact checkers and journalists, we're sort of used to getting screwed over by new technology when it comes out. You think of the platforms and all of that. So I want to know, like, how is this moment different than something like the pivot to video era?
I get that question all the time, and I think it's because it's the same social media companies, the platforms that basically we got burned by the last time, that is now coming and telling us that there's this new technology that is going to revolutionize the world, and it seems like it's just social media all over again, the pivot to video moment all over again. But this technology is different because in social media, we were dependent on platforms to get traffic. It was probably not the right move to make. And what generative AI now is, you are the customers. The relationship between platforms and in the social media and the pivot to video moment and in generative AI is different. Generative AI is a fundamental technology that is impacting every industry, not just the news industry. If you look at any industry, from healthcare to defense, it's having an impact on them. And pivot to video was more of just a way to get information across, the way in which information was disseminated. It was not impacting industries the way in which generative AI is. And I think it is a big mistake that we as an industry would make if we keep comparing it to the pivot to video moment, because what happened over there was a completely different set of mistakes that had been made. But generative AI, we are the consumers. We are now in charge of the relationship of how we can use AI. We can demand more from these tech players at this moment in time, because there's a lot of legislation that has not been passed yet, that needs to be, that will be. We can be actively contributing to those and be voices in that if we are able to use these technologies and know how to effectively use it, what the risks are, how it is harmful and impacting people. All of that is important for us to talk about. We are now the customers, and that gives us more agency and power in how to use these generative AI models.
So I think the idea of collaborating and using one unified voice to adapt to the technologies, but also push back on the companies that are creating a lot of hype and making sure we have a voice and a say in this new future, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just so important because this technology still at a very nascent stage. It's evolving every single day. We are dealing with the worst form of AI at this moment. And I don't think any one of us could have here predicted how good this technology could have been just a couple of years ago. And so this is the time we need to be completely immersing ourselves. There is only so much that the people who are currently in the AI and news intersection are able to do. We really need a lot more people in this industry to be actively taking part in how AI could help us. How are the good ways to use AI? Because we need more good ways to use AI to combat the bad ways people are using it.
So you mentioned how quickly the technology is advancing, and that's something that's been really notable to me, because it feels like every time we put together a workshop or training, you have to kind of throw everything out and redo it. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen in the last 6 months that kind of illustrates how fast this stuff is actually advancing?
I do these kinds of talks almost every week. And every single week, I have to just, before I go on stage, I have to review slides and update them. I was updating these slides up until last night. And you can ask the team over here. I had to update it because there were different tools that I was experimenting with. I had new ideas, and I was inputting that. It's almost every day that I have a new tool that I come across, a new way in which it could help you. And that's because I'm in that space actively experimenting, talking to people who are using that tool. So that's just at the speed at which it is going. I would never have thought that we would be having right now multimodal AI. This year was set to be the big year of multimodal AI, which is where you can talk to videos and images, and it's able to give you text and video and images all together. That's what we're seeing. But at this level, it's able to do a really great job of extracting claims from a really long video over there. All of these kinds of stuff is where the technology is just really enhancing and getting good so quickly. And so I think when technology gets so good, one of the main things that I talk about is that you shouldn't feel like, oh no, I learned all of this and the landscape's changed. The first step is understanding how this technology works. You've done that, you know how to use it. That's the first thing you've gotten right. The second thing is you're now playing around with this technology, so you know how it works, what are some of the use cases, do you have all of that? But third and finally, the most important thing that I think as an industry we need to pay attention at is systems thinking. We need to know how systems are built, how our workflows within our own newsrooms built, and start mapping out processes and workflows to understand how AI can help out with that. If the AI can't help out with it right now, keep that aside, and you need to see how the tool and technology is evolving, so then later on, it might be able to help you with that. But what we as an industry need to focus on right now is understand the core benefits of generative AI, the strengths and its limitations, start gathering use cases within your organization. We need to have a culture of information sharing, building institutional knowledge. Go back and ask yourselves, how do you gather knowledge within your entire organization? How do we build that institutional knowledge? And then finally, start adopting more of a systems thinking approach where you're starting to map out the workflows in your newsroom. You need to know how things work and exactly start to build that, then only you're able to start using AI. So if the technology is evolving rapidly, that's one thing, but we need to focus on the foundations. It's only then can we use AI.
That's a really great point. So I failed to mention in my opening remarks that a lot of fact checkers are using AI and generative AI in really interesting ways. You mentioned claim identification, transcribing and translating, summarizing headlines, even creating TikToks and podcasts. But what is your advice for maybe a fact-checking newsroom that doesn't know where to start, that doesn't maybe have the technical staff available? Like where should they get going to kind of get on the road to adopting this technology?
Every single example that I showed right now was meant for a one-person newsroom. If you as an individual have never played around with tools like ChatGPT, just start going one by one with every single example that I showed you. All of these tools are available to you. ChatGPT, just last month, made their most recent model available for free. And so go and use that. If the last time you went and used ChatGPT was last year and you went and used the free version of ChatGPT, you were dealing with one of the oldest, most primitive forms of generative AI. And so go and just talk to ChatGPT, start incorporating it. Start incorporating tools like Perplexity in just understanding what it's doing and how it's doing that. It's going and scraping news and information. The only way to know that it's doing that is if you are going and playing around with this technology and seeing, is my information coming up there? How is it being portrayed? Are they exactly verbatim copying that information? We won't know until we are playing around with these tools. So that's another thing. Just go and take the first step with ChatGPT because it's an accessible tool. It's one of the best tools out there in the model, out there in the world right now, and it's available worldwide. Otherwise, I would be saying Claude, actually, which was from Anthropic, but it's not available in a lot of countries right now, not available here in Bosnia. I was not able to use Claude, and so that's one thing. But if you're in a region where Claude is available, if you're in the US, try out Claude, and for all of its language generation capabilities, it's really, really good.
So can you talk a little bit about the idea of experimenting with purpose? I think one thing that we're seeing in the US is everyone's trying to turn everything into a chatbot and just saying, I need to get into AI, let's turn it into a chatbot. Let's integrate a chatbot onto our site, and then we're in the future. Can you talk about maybe the benchmarks that you need to think about when you are inserting these AI into your systems, or what you're hearing from newsrooms about effective ways to track impact and make sure you're not just throwing a chatbot at a problem and expecting it to solve it?
Yeah, if you've not experimented with AI, chatbot's not going to solve anything. And in fact, chatbot should be one of the last things you do because there are a lot of risks involved with generative AI chatbots. Because even if you are connecting it to an information source, it can hallucinate. You need complex workarounds around that. There's complex workflows that data scientists need to be working on. You need technologists to work on that chatbot. Anybody who promises you a tool that they're going to be able to create a chatbot on your site and it's never going to hallucinate it's not correct at this moment in time. So beware of those claims. Beware of hyperbolic claims that vendors will be making, because I'm seeing a lot of that happening. And you will not be able to assess vendors if you are not, again, dealing with this technology and being able to use it. But coming back to your question about what are kind of like the steps and the benchmarks with which people are approaching AI, the first thing is looking at internal workflows. That's where AI can be helpful. It's about taking a step back and seeing what are all of the pain points in the newsroom, and what are the different ways in which we can use and think about how AI can help. And the answer might be AI is not a solution for this, because accuracy is really important. But there might be tools where and places where it's good to get a first draft of something. If something is a repetitive task that you have to do all the time, these are kind of the questions that I usually talk about and think about. If it's something that you have to do again and again, is it valuable to have a first draft to start from? That's when generative AI might be a helpful step to think about it. Is it something that you want to share across your entire organization? Again, that's where generative AI might be helpful, because you can create and prototype some sort of like a workflow that can scale across your entire organization. Another big thing to think about is that you don't need a huge tech team today to prototype and work with generative AI. This technology has become so easy to use and accessible. You can prototype your own bots. If you go onto ChatGPT and now you get the paid version of ChatGPT, there are things like custom GPT, where you literally tell the bot what you want to make, and it will start to create that. And within minutes, you can create that. And you're seeing custom GPTs doing all kinds of stuff, creating every single example that I showed you could also be created into a custom GPT, and you can start building that. It's about starting to then build out small prototypes, seeing its effectiveness. If you're constantly using ChatGPT for some specific task, create a custom GPT for that, share it across your entire organization, and see how it is being effective. And again, once you're sharing workflows and these AI use cases across your organization, you're then getting more people onto it, experimenting with it, seeing how that workflow can be better, and that's helping you evaluate your own workflows as well.
Great. So this will be the last question before I open it up to the crowd. So how much, if we want to get started and start experimenting with AI, what are we telling our audience? Like, how should we be disclosing how we use AI? How much should we be disclosing? Where should we be disclosing? Like, what are some of the best ways that you've seen news organizations say, tell their audience and try to keep that trust that they have?
Yeah, and I think the newsroom, especially that I often refer to, that's done a really good job about talking about their AI ethics in their AI ethics policies, The Guardian. They have AI principles and not AI guidelines, which I think AI guidelines is very prescriptive about what journalists can do in the newsroom, whereas AI principles is more setting the stage for a broad, long-term vision of how AI can be used in the industry, in the newsroom, because this technology is changing really quickly. Maybe currently you don't want them to build any custom GPTs, but now custom GPTs is embedded in your technology and embedded everywhere, and so you start prototyping with that. Those guidelines will have to constantly get updated, but right now what we need is a foundation and a vision of how are we going to be approaching AI, and I think Guardian is one of that does a really good job. And I think there are mainly a few things that we need to focus on, and the first thing is transparency, and talking about how transparent are we with audience. There's a lot of ways in which you can be telling them. It's like you have your entire AI ethics policy and listing out the ways in which AI is being used in it. I don't think for every single article that you have generated a headline and generated an SEO metadata, and maybe you used AI in some sort of way to scour through all of these PDFs, that's information overload for an audience, and that's not contributing to the core of what it is. Because at the end of the day, if you as a journalist were the final endpoint, I think you have made the decision to know and see and verify the information, and that's going out to the public. But now, if AI is producing that information and there is no human oversight at all involved, that's where you need to be saying explicitly that AI was involved and AI produced that information, and that needs to be very transparent. And the other thing I think covers a lot, and a lot of how I'm seeing is that they cover everything in their AI ethics policy, like telling their audience that they're using it for all of these different purposes. If you're using for images and videos, it's so crucial to be transparent about that because we will lose trust with our audience. Another good step is even telling and being transparent about what the prompt was that you used. And so that's also, again, building literacy, AI literacy with our audience. And they could be like, oh, maybe I can go and there's this tool called DALL-E, and I just have to put this prompt. And then they can play around with it, and we are helping our audience that way. So that's one for image and videos. But then when you're talking about AI ethics policy, I think you also need to talk about accountability. Who's accountable for the decisions that are made by AI systems and AI workflows? Who is in charge of looking at the accuracy of all of these, updating it? Once you've created an AI workflow, it's not just that we leave it. This is the technology that is, again, rapidly evolving. There needs to be somebody who's constantly looking at how accurate this is, how things can be made better, how many times is it getting wrong in not really helping us in this workflow so that you can go back and prototype and build on it. This is something that is very iterative, and you have to keep going back onto it. And then finally, I think one of the most important things that was also in the Guardian's AI ethics principles was about purpose-driven use, using that to augment our capabilities, not replacing our jobs, but how can we work in tandem with AI to do our work better. And it's only when it's helping us do quality journalism, that's when we're using AI.
All right. Do we have any questions from the audience? Do we have...
Can I? Hello.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, over there. Okay.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for a great presentation. I wanted to ask a little bit about AI ethics, more specifically about the impact of such tools on the environment. Like, there is a lot of this talk about how Gen AI impacts water scarcity, the energy consumption, etc., etc. Shouldn't we also remember about this, yeah? Shouldn't we also balance it out, like remember that for example, the benefit of verifying a claim a little bit faster might not outweigh the impact on the environment. Like for me, it seems kind of funny to, for example, verify climate change denialism using tools that also impact climate.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's really important to talk about because all of these systems have a really big impact on the climate. They require huge resources to run, data centers, electricity, and water to power this technology. And every single time you go and ask anything on ChatGPT, that's taking huge amounts of energy to propagate and to be able to use it. And it's funny you're making that comparison, going and asking doing a climate journalism fact check, and that's impacting the climate. And I think one thing for us to also understand is this is also a moment in time, and we have to balance the ethics of, like, if we don't do it, what's going to happen? And if we as an industry who are focused on understanding and figuring out the good use cases for AI, if we just completely take a step back from this technology, the disinformation actors don't care about the climate. They're not caring about anything. And this technology is spreading and evolving. And I think what we as journalists need to focus on, our job right now, is thinking also about how can we use AI for good. And at the same time, reporting heavily, covering how AI is impacting the climate and making shifts over there. We do our work by the reporting. Impact happens by the reporting that is being done. And that's how we can make our voice heard. But none of this will be possible if we just completely take a step back from AI, because there are going to be other voices and bad actors who are going to come and influence that space and bring that forward. So that's the way in which I would think about the pros and cons of what happens if we completely take a step back. One way to mitigate that is if you are using it, you are worried about the climate impact, go and focus a lot of your reporting and coverage on the impacts of it. And that's the way I would approach that.
Great question. Yeah, and that's where the heavy accountability reporting on these systems themselves is incredibly important. I think the Pulitzer Center is doing some really great trainings on that as well.
Hi, Nikta. I'm from India today. My question is about large language models. As you said in your presentation that as of now, the LLMs are only scraping data, and while we call them large language models, they do not understand a bit of it, and they are just reproducing, looking into the patterns and reproducing the data. So my question is, as an AI futurist, what time do you think in future that LLMs will be able to look into the nuances of the language? As of now, they are scraping data and just reproducing something. As a result, we get things like Google AI asks you to eat stones and put glue to your pizza. So when do you think that is going to stop and these large language models would understand the nuances of the language?
Thanks for that question. I think it's really important also to think about the way in which these foundation models are working is prediction, and that's what's causing these hallucinations. And there's a lot of research that's being done on how can we reduce these hallucinations to make these also truthful machines. But one of the big issues with all of that is the way in which this is all statistical probabilities. A lot of the research that's coming out recently is saying that we might never find a solution for hallucination. And so what does that mean if tech companies are rolling this out? Again, that's where accountability reporting is important. How are we living in a real world experiment right now where a machine is spreading misinformation, plausible sounding text, and it's tricking people into believing that it's true? So that's where we have to focus on reporting and making sure about that. And I think, I'm not sure if we will get to that way. We might be able to reduce hallucinations heavily with a lot of other technologies like AI agents helping with fact checking, and we could, but at this moment in time, a lot of the research is showing that large language models are, we might not be able to find a solution for hallucinations. And that's why we need to be on top of this technology so that we make sure tech companies are staying accountable and not just getting a chatbot out there in the public that is spreading misinformation accidentally.
Well, time is technically up, but we have I will make time for a question because it's coming from Angie.
Yeah, I have two concerns about how we use and experiment with these tools, which is what we input into it. Like, if we put our stories in there, are we giving them our data? So there's first this proprietary business concern, and then second is the privacy concern. Like, if we're asking, and this is more on an individual basis, but if you're putting healthcare questions in, are you exposing yourself? Or international security issues. So the business issues and then the privacy and security issues.
Absolutely. Very important questions to talk about. And the first thing is about the business concern of they are training on your models, which is correct. If you are going to the free version or the consumer version of ChatGPT, they train on every single input any text that you input into that model. But there are other models that are available on the platform. So you have ChatGPT for Teams. They claim that they do not train any of this information on your model. But there are also Gemini from Google. And if you go directly to Microsoft Azure, you can get direct access to these foundational large language models, create your own sort of ChatGPT interface. And now all it's doing is completely closed off. It is not leaking. They're not training the data on any of that information. They are supposedly having a completely secure pathway to just that model. So that's one way to address it, and that's how businesses are using. If you're using it as a business, please don't be using ChatGPT, the free version, or ChatGPT, the consumer version. You need to have ChatGPT for Teams because it's not training on your data. And then if you're more advanced, you can go into Microsoft Azure or use Gemini, Google. The second point about the privacy concern, that's huge for an industry like us where we're dealing with such sensitive information. And so that's why I showed anything LLM, which can run locally on your computer. There are a lot of language models now, small language models, that can run locally on your computer, which means you can completely disconnect from the internet and you can still harness the power of generative AI, but now you have that privacy component. And so you can run models like Llama, Mistral, all these open source models within your computer. It requires a bit of like compute power. You need to have a significant GPU on your computer, but that is all possible, and we are getting better at creating smaller language models that can run locally on your computer. So I think the future is going to have a place where we will be able to have more models that are more effective, able to produce at the level of like GPT-4, and do that without us connecting to them, connecting to the internet even.
All right. Well, Nikita, thank you so very much for this incredibly informative session. Thank you all for your questions and for your interest in this very important topic.
Yep. Thank you so much. Welcome.